and welcome to the Intern Roundtable. My name is Maria Wood, and I will be the host for today's show. Joining me is Reese Hurd, and the topics for today will focus on the new school year. Reese and I will be entering our senior year here at Abington High School. Our guest today is the principal of Abington High School, Mr. Jonathan Bourn. Thank you for being our guest here today.
Thank you both for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you, and it's good to see you both again.
You as well. So how's your summer been after such a hectic and honestly different kind of school year?
Yeah, it's absolutely substantially different than last summer was in a lot of ways. You know, July was quieter, as most school summers are. And then as we were talking before we got started, August is picking up with intensity in the work, but that is a little bit more typical to what summers are usually like.
Yeah.
So had some time to relax, so I'm ready for the year ahead. So
That's awesome.
Cool. So what do you think were some of the successes of last year in the middle of the pandemic? Or is there any improvements that you're looking forward to making?
Yeah, there's always room for improvements.
Yeah.
When I think back to last year, I know it was not ideal in many ways for many kids. I think the success was just the dedication of everybody in the school and parents, knowing and just acknowledging that this is not what anyone wants or prefers, but figuring out how to make the best out of what opportunities there were.
For sure.
And so, improvements, some of the improvements are just going to have by virtue of certain COVID restrictions relaxing, right? Like your classroom situation hopefully is different than rows and spaces in all cases. Have a chance to interact with your classmates, which I think in and of itself is huge, and that's not anything I need to do. But we also learned a lot last year. Last year forced us to do things that might have been unthinkable, that now when we look back and say, that actually might stick around. That was actually a good idea. So the buy-in, the level of community buy-in that I experienced, I thought was a huge success.
So you just mentioned things that might possibly stick around.
I was going to mention that too.
What's your opinion on, I know we had a ton of mask breaks last year, and we would have, because of those 90-minute or so classes, we had those mask breaks, but if the mask mandates are possibly dropped later on in the school year, what's your opinion on kind of having those almost like mental breaks, sort of? Because I know I got a, and you might have gotten it too, we got a survey talking about what's your opinion on mental breaks if we don't have masks anymore.
Yeah. So you may or may not know, we are reverting back to, so you were both sophomores, I guess. So we're reverting back to that float 7 schedule.
With Bridge
It
Block.
really didn't get a long life before the shutdown in March of 2020. Maybe most of the school year started in October.
Yep.
So we're going to revert back to that because we really don't have a good sample of how well that schedule works. So with that, last year with the 80-minute, 85-minute classes, to take a 10, 15-minute break was not only inconsequential to the learning, it was actually kind of needed, to just break up things, and we used that as an opportunity for a mass break. So I don't believe, or I don't think we will have planned mass breaks during your academic periods.
Yeah.
However, knowing, and one of the values from last year is this notion of nature, and it's nice to be outside in the lawn and just chatting with people. We do have that bridge block experience Monday through Thursday. I would not be opposed to taking a group of kids for a walk either up on Riley Field, around the school, or just hanging out on the lawn and just relaxing. I think that is, some people might think that's not productive, but I think last year we might have found that those mental breaks to just really hang out and sit in the lawn and chat with friends was really invigorating and refreshing.
I definitely felt that way.
So I think that's an avenue in a way that we can keep that learning forward.
Okay, so since you have worked elsewhere as some sort of educator, how would you compare Abington to working somewhere else?
Yeah. Each community I work in, as you can imagine, has slightly different profiles, things they do better than others. I just met a new family this morning and was happy to say, and I say this to everybody I used to work with when I used to be an assistant principal here and coming back, this is a tight-knit community, and kids don't fall through the cracks here. Everyone gets noticed. Not to say that kids don't struggle, but they never do it alone. And I think, that is a point of pride I have in advertising the school when we meet with people who want to work here, is just letting them know the culture of how hard everyone will work and how dedicated we are to each kid, depending on what their needs are. And that can hit a wide spectrum of things: academic needs, social emotional needs, So I think that sense of community fabric and that net where it's like we're not okay with losing people is an absolute strength of this school and community.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to speak too much for her, but I think that throughout our high school career, we've both experienced some sort of individuality and felt like we were included or people actually cared about our ourselves, even if we have like hundreds of other students. Like, we still had some sort of importance,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, that personal piece is critical, right? And I think it's something we do very well here. So,
Yeah.
Okay. How do you see this year playing out, not only for the general high school population, but also for the class of 2022? Because we've seen the class of 2020 who got everything ripped from them immediately, and then we got the class of 2021, still in the middle of a COVID pandemic, but with some restrictions released, and they were able to have their senior activities, and now it's us.
Yeah.
Big question mark.
yeah, and I, somewhere along the line last year, retired my crystal ball and stopped guessing the future because all I've been is wrong when trying to guess the future. So
I think that goes for all of us.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think the mindset we took last year, and I will continue through to this year, is we will do the best with what we can, right? We will do the best with whatever opportunities we have. I remain optimistic that for events of the spring and late spring proms receptions, that they're just proms and receptions.
Yeah.
That we don't have to think about it. We just go and do prom reception stuff, and that's that. But that's not entirely up to me, right? It's the state guidance and all the other rules, revolving that really dictate what we can do. But all that is an opportunity to just think creatively. How can we do this differently? How can we do something that's like a reasonable facsimile of this if it's not the precise thing you had?
Yeah.
And last year's prom, maybe not perfect, but I was there. The kids had an absolutely amazing
I was also there.
time.
It looked
You saw that.
awesome.
The parents did a great job. Everyone had a blast that went. So, you can do a lot. And I think back to thinking of things we learned last year, you can have fun in a tent in the back lawn behind your high school.
Next to a track, yeah.
And you don't have to go into Boston or rent a hotel room to do that, So it's just, if you want to, great. But do you know what I mean? It's kind of like realizing we are the attraction, being somewhere with each other. That's what's fun.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. So sophomore year, I and a couple of other friends were in the Student Arts magazine, and recently, of course, junior year, we didn't have that. So do you think all of the extracurriculars and clubs are going to return this year?
So all the extracurriculars and clubs we are hoping to return. All of them require an advisor, right? So a staff member. I do think a lot of staff members after last year and just the amount of time and attention that last year required. It was like a time and a half double time job for teachers.
Yeah.
That it was like, let me kind of scale back and make sure, right, I'm doing my classroom stuff right. So there's no prohibition on extracurriculars as it currently stands outside of, there just needs to be an adult in the room to facilitate that.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
What are you, we might have already asked this,
It's
but
okay.
what are you most excited for? Like what do you see as like the biggest opportunity for this year, given that it's still kind of a pandemic situation, but it's different?
Yeah, I would say from that standpoint, I'm really excited for what I hope is your classroom experience to revert to a more typical classroom experience. The masks are going to be noticeable, obviously, when we come back in the fall, but you may be sitting in groups, working in pairs, moving throughout the classroom. So we're not going to really be restricting motion as it currently stands, like in a classroom. So outside of how noticeable the masks are, working in groups, pairs, partnering, projects, it feels nice to be able to kind of untie the hands of our staff and say, do everything, do all the great stuff you've ever done.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited to see how you all interact with that. Obviously got to know many of you last year, right? And I'm just very curious to see what your learning journeys are in your classroom and what the teachers have cooked up for you. I know they're excited to kind of be able to just do their thing and not worry about Canvas and Teams and all that stuff. So.
All the electronic stuff.
Yeah.
I remember it might have even been the last week before school. You were actually in this class. We were in Miss Wakeland's Accelerated Algebra and Trig class, and it was the first time we had gone up to the board. And it was like something so little, but it was like we were doing out math problems. And it was like, we can finally, like, this feels normal. It's literally just writing out an equation on the board, but it felt semi-normal.
It's crazy how like a little change like that can make you realize how much we have been afraid of doing or prohibited from throughout the school year. And I also think that a lot of great teachers in the school heavily rely on like group work or putting people physically
That's
together
their
in
teaching
desks.
style.
There's so many teachers that is their style, and I think that you can see it in the teachers that they'll be happier teaching throughout this year, so I'm excited for that.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear that that was your experience and prevalent, because most people do their best work in groups or pairs. I mean, there are
Yeah.
some who, like, I got this on my own, right? But for many, like, we're social beings.
Exactly.
Right? And we kind of need to bounce our ideas off each other
Exactly,
to learn.
yeah. I mean, group projects were a little bit weird. We would be put in some sort of like list on Canvas, and it was just completely different. It just didn't feel normal at all. And normalcy, I think, is going to be a great thing this year.
So we were chatting a little bit before the break about me being a 70s child and coming of age in the 90s.
Yeah.
Yep.
My son is 15, going to be a sophomore in high school. And I don't know that you guys picked up on this, but the electronics is a decent stand-in, but it's no replacement for the real deal.
No,
Right?
it's
So
totally not.
assigning a group of 5 on Canvas gets the job done, but it doesn't have the feel of being at a table with 4 of your classmates.
Everyone doing the
Exactly.
doing
So,
the
you
work.
know, like, if there's a lesson to be learned, it's the value of people. You can't replace that. So,
Yeah.
like, kind of really leaning into, you know, seeing your friends, being able to fist bump somebody.
It's
like,
gonna be
hey,
nice not staring at a screen anymore.
It
I have to
totally-
admit.
100%. Like, I think detaching from electronics is awesome.
Both of us really prioritize our grades, and I think that it was just absolutely miserable and difficult, more so than we thought it was going to be, staring at a screen for an hour and a half trying to maintain info from a lesson, like a PowerPoint someone was sharing. So, yeah.
I agree. Our Wednesdays, when we had those Wednesdays off, I had meetings straight through. I was more tired on Wednesdays than the days students were in the building.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
from, like, I think screen fatigue. It's a thing.
That reminds
really
me.
is.
Are you familiar with our Wave Week Wednesdays? Do you know if those are coming back? Because I know that was a
Yeah.
common topic around not only seniors but the entire school.
Yes, familiar. Yes, they're coming back.
Let's
so,
go.
Twice a month,
Celebration.
not every other week, but
Yeah.
twice a month,
Okay.
with one exception in May,
Yeah.
just because the last one would have been on a half day. So instead of an hour early, you get out 2.5
half day,
hours
yeah.
early. So I figured
I think that's fair.
seniors last week too. I figured you'd be happy with that.
Yeah.
Okay. So there you go. That's
There's going to be
back.
a lot of people happy about that. It's going to be a
Oh,
lot of
yeah.
Duncan and Mary Lou's
I was going to say, I know like the coffee economy in Abington will be very pleased with
Yep.
the increased consumers.
Yeah. I've heard a lot of people say different things about it. Like, some people will say that they notice, like, oh, we're not going back to them, but it's nice to know for sure that we are.
Yeah. And, you know, one of the things, too, I don't know when this is going to air, but we've been, I wanted to send out a newsletter Monday saying, hey, we start next week.
Yeah.
But, like, state's coming out with info Tuesday, school committee Wednesday.
Yep.
And, like, we just still have a lot
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
kind of,
yeah.
you know, we just want to, I think Superintendent Schaefer said this nicely last night. We don't want to send out bad information. So we're waiting to get it right.
Things are
So
constantly
Yeah.
changing.
we aim midday tomorrow to give a letter out, and it'll include Wave Week Wednesdays at there.
Okay. Awesome.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you have anything else?
I don't. I think we've gotten to everything.
Alrighty. Thank you, Principal Bourn, so much for being our guest today. You have been watching the Intern Roundtable. Thank you for watching, and until our next show, have a great day.